So here what we first thing we need to understand is what are the changes in accounting practices. So here you can see the depreciation in 1 year was 246, then it brought down to 80,000, then it increased again to 191,000. Since I know the hotel, I know why is it, but for you, you may not, you may be wondering why is that. So because of this is because of change in the accounting practices of the hotel. So first thing we need to see is what break-even point we want to take. Do we want to take earning before interest, taxes, and depreciation, or do we want to take after the depreciation? Now, depreciation is non-cash expense, so you may not want. So you may want to calculate the break-even point before calculating the depreciation and taxes. So we may want to focus on here EBITDA, on earning before interest, taxes, and depreciation, because this is something which is going to impact. If you income, you don't have to pay the tax. So that is simple. So what we want to achieve is a break-even point to recover the earning before interest, taxes, and depreciation. Now another measure, conservative measure here is that the depreciation is necessary for maintaining the reserves for replacement of assets. So it's a very important part of business. If the business is surviving merely on break-even point, means not recovering the depreciation, then it will be very difficult for them to replicate or to replace the assets in a longer term. So you may want to calculate the break-even point after net loss, or after profit after the taxes. So this is the past. Now we have seen the past. In past, accounting practices has been changing. What is the future like? So what are the depreciation in the coming future? So we can see the latest numbers as a basis. So we will be in, for this example, we will be looking at an break-even point for NPAT, net profit after taxes. So we will build up the model together to calculate how much should be the break-even point of this hotel for being net profit after the taxes to be negative, to be zero. Now this was the first step. The second step that we have to do is to calculate the ratios to understand how the hotel's performance are interlinked from one department to another department, how much profit ratio what is the ratio between the food revenue and expenses. Now here you can see I have already calculated some ratios. So this ratio basically is going to tell you what is the ratio of our rooms income to the total income. So here you can see rooms income has been 73% or 76% of the total revenue. Food revenue has been 22%, 22, 23, 22%. Then the other operating department has been 4%, 3%, 1%. Or if you look at the numbers here, it's continue to drop, even though the number of rooms are in room revenue increasing, room occupied rooms are number or continue to increase. So one thing you can identify from here is simply that the other operating department revenue is not dependent or is not related that much to the occupancy, or the hotel is been not doing something which it has been doing in the past. That's why their other operating revenue is dropping, or the market segmentation is changing. In the break-even point, it's very important to understand what are the relationship between the occupied room nights compared to the F&B revenue and other operating departments, because break-even point normally is calculated based on, okay, what is the level of occupancy when the hotel will make no profit, no loss. So if you know what is the level of occupancy, let's say in this example is 22%. Now we were making $32,000 revenue on 6,000 room nights. We were making $32,000, $33,000 revenue. If we assume the same ratio and say, okay, now if let's say the occupancy increased to 25%, will my revenue increase? We should have thought so, but here the relationship explains that even though the occupied rooms are increasing, the number of room nights are not good. The number of other operating department revenue is not increasing in the same ratio. F&B revenue is increasing, let's look at it, how much of this is because of the in-house revenue. So if you have the statistics to understand already that what is the F&B revenue, what how much of it come from the in-house guests, how much of it is coming from the outside guests, what are the other operating department where the customers are coming from, you don't need to calculate these ratios, you can know immediately. But if you don't know, there is something which we can calculate. So we will come to that later. Let's complete this ratio analysis. Then the cost of sale is F&B cost will only be related to the F&B revenue. So here we have calculated the F&B revenue to the F&B cost to the F&B revenue. Here you can see food cost divided by the food revenue. So the cost you can see is dropping from 35 to 32 to 30%. It means that the hotel is getting economies of scale. Higher is the ratio of F&B per departmental performance, the higher will be the cost of operations. Now you can see the other operating department also is showing a declining trend, and so it means that they are also based on the, even though the number of revenue is dropping, the expense is dropping even faster. So which is different, so you may need to investigate it more, but since this is not a very significant amount, we can just ignore it for the time being. Now let's look at the payroll expenses. So payroll expenses, since they are mostly fixed, but how much is the ratio? That's why it's understandable that whenever the revenue increase, the ratio will drop significantly. So here is what we see in this case as well, but it may not drop, or it may not increase the that significantly, but here you can see the ratio is different. 2017 the payroll expenses were 11% of the revenue, then 7, then 6.8. In F&B it was 30, 24 and 24. In other departments 91, 76 or 87%. So we will break them out even more to understand what is how much of them is fixed and how much of them is variable, without looking at the details. And then similar with the other expenses, we have calculated the ratio to their particular revenue. Then departmental contribution, other departments we don't need to calculate because they are unallocated and are not related to any particular department or overall revenue. What we need is just to understand how much of them is fixed and how much of these expenses are variable.